Well, the latest episode of The Acolyte, Episode 6, Teach/Corrupt, is out, and we now know why Star Wars needed an intimacy coordinator for this Space Wizard show for 12-year-olds. Let's talk about the most boring episode yet on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is Mr. VashSky. Vash, did you watch The Acolyte last night?
I did. I could barely keep my eyes open because it was so boring. But I did actually absorb the content right there. Oh, Jonas, why does it have to be so bad?
I really don't know. This one, okay, I'm just gonna say, I rated the last episode a 7, and a lot of people gave me trouble for that. I rated it a 7 because it was more entertaining, not better quality, but more entertaining. At least something happened in the last episode, even though most of what happened is they killed a bunch of people with lightsabers, and you kind of forget who died because it's all just this blur of what's going on, and they don't explain cortosis. By the way, in this episode, they do finally say the words cortosis. So, you have your explanation. Everything is explained, except they don't really explain in the show what happens either. This one was very boring. It was a stack of scenes that it's almost as if the order of those scenes was irrelevant. Vash, do you want to tell people what happened in this episode? Or I can give it a shot if you can still remember through the hazy fog of apathy.
No, I think I can remember. So we find Osha on a planet that looks surprisingly like Octo. She kind of wakes up after being, I suppose, kidnapped by qimir. Qimir.
Or maybe it's the stranger. And I'm hearing that qimir might not even actually be his name. That might have been the name of his other identity that he adopted when they were on Brendok. Of course, you say they're on an unknown planet. It literally says the title card, which Star Wars, not exactly known for their title cards until you get past the first few movies there. This one literally says unknown planet, despite the fact that it does look like Octu, which I'm hearing is Octu, not Octo. I don't really care about the pronunciation of Octo.
Octu? Octu? Okay,
right,
I got it. Yeah, that's... okay, so wakes up... And then she follows him, like you said, Jonas. She follows him very closely. So I don't know. Was he waiting for her to wake up? Not sure. He goes to take a bath, and that's where we get that romance coordinator aspect of this series come into play. Very, very interesting. Jonas, what were your thoughts on this? Because I was like, wow, we're really going there.
Well, yeah. Okay. So first of all, she's following close enough that there's no way that he was unaware of her. And she wakes up, has enough time to put on darker clothes. So strange. Does she see the helmet there? I forget. It's such a, like, I was paying attention to the show and trying to figure out what's going on. But he goes to this lake or whatever to take a bath. He has a bag with him that it seems that the only reason he took that bag with him is so that he could drop that bag before he also dropped his robe and jumped into the water. I'm going to say two things here on this. First of all, you don't see anything, but you see a lot more than you think would be appropriate for Star Wars at this point. And I do understand that Star Wars is in a very different place than it was in the 1980s when we got Princess Leia in a gold bikini. Disney is famous for trying to get away from that slave Leia aesthetic. So, I'm going to say that Star Wars right now is having a little bit of an identity crisis, or maybe a little bit of a hypocrisy here. Like they say that Carrie Fisher stuff from back in the day, we're not going to do any of that. But then they've got this guy taking off his clothes, and there's a tweet you can go see it of the audio description. Which, if you don't know what the audio description is, there is a service on Disney Plus that if you can change the audio to describe it for people who are visually impaired, and it's talking about he disrobes as she goes in to get a better look, and talks about his taut muscles on his back as they show the scars, and he disrobes and his bare feet descend into the lake and things like this. I'm going to say this is the most thirsty Star Wars has been for a very long time.
She straightens up for a better look. He begins to undress, revealing a prominent scar on his well-toned back. He steps forward with the sunlight accentuating his taut muscles.
He also invites her to get into the bath with him as he's buck naked. I do believe that's the first time we've used the words buck naked on this channel, but maybe some of our fans can correct me on that in the comments. That is the most notable thing that happens in this episode, because essentially nothing else happens in this episode, even though it's 38 minutes long in runtime, 32 in actual show.
Yeah, I mean, even the B plot, I guess, with May, I don't know, playing coy with Soul until Soul figures her out. I mean, that all is just, not only is it completely uninteresting, but then now Soul has her like tied to the bed, but
some kind of medical bed or something like that.
Right.
And like he does knock her out with a stun pistol, and he reveals that he actually does know that it's the other one, even though I'm not sure that scar shows up anywhere in this episode, despite the fact that we finally realize in the last episode, okay, she does the lightsaber haircut, doesn't singe her hair, but we do see that she has some kind of witch tattoo on her forehead. I'm not sure that we saw that witch tattoo in this episode. The power goes out on the ship again for inexplicable reasons, and he asks her to fix it. The Jedi are informed that everyone on the planet is dead. They leave for some reason, although they leave right before the Jedi get there, so that the Jedi can get down to the planet and find all the corpses. Why did they leave all the corpses in the last episode? Well, apparently so that the Jedi can find them in this episode. There's just so much here that it doesn't make sense. It's just so vague and ethereal. And by ethereal, I mean ether, like a cloth with ether put over your mouth as you watch this and try to figure out what is going on. I will say, Jung-jae actually appears to be acting in this show, which is something that I'm not seeing from some of the other performers, some of the younger performers here. The performances, he's brought up the median quite a bit here, because he actually cries and he talks about what's going on, and he says something to the effect of, I am going to talk and you are going to listen, and I'm going to tell you what I've held on to for 16 years. That would actually be a really good way to end this episode. In fact, I thought that's how they were going to end this episode. But instead, Vash, do you want to talk about what they end on? Explain this helmet.
Okay, well, you got to back up a little bit, because, well, Smilo Ren is, you can see him and he's repairing the helmet that was destroyed in the last episode. And you know, we're going to talk about slow-mo of that last episode and some of the fight scenes and choreography in there. But I didn't notice this, I think, the first 3 times I saw that episode and those fight scenes, but the lightsabers actually were absorbed partially into the helmet. So it doesn't necessarily resist 100%. There is some absorption, and through that absorption of that energy, then it cracks, and that's how Jeki is able to like break it essentially when they get in their fight. Anyway, Smilo Ren repairs it. And then you can see that he has a cortosis vein in the cave that he has now made his dwelling there. And so he leaves the room after a back and forth between him and Osha. And then Osha goes to the helmet, and she actually picks it up. She looks at it, and she actually puts it on. And you can hear the breathing apparatus that was featured, I believe, in episode 1. So that's kind of what happens there. Now, Smilo Ren sets it up to suggest that not only is this a cortosis helmet, but it's also kind of like the Padawan's helmet back in the Jedi Academy, in which this kind of like blocks out the Force or something.
No,
a little bit.
Actually, it was the opposite. So in the previous episode, he said he was wearing the helmet so that he could block out other people from reading his mind. And in this one, he said that it actually isolates it so it's just you and the Force. I would assume that a Jedi's ability to read thoughts, if that is canon now, that they can read specific thoughts, that would come from the Force. So I think this is a gap here that, again, it doesn't quite make sense to me why you would have a helmet that helps to focus the Force through someone, but also disconnects them from someone else's ability to use the Force. It just doesn't quite jive. They do at least say the words cortosis in the episode, which is fine. It explains that it exists. It doesn't quite explain anything that happened in the last episode, though. I mean, we're going to have to do our own video talking about the last episode and also the article out of that Park Place discussing Shadiversity's video, because it really exposes a lot of what's wrong in that previous fight. The only thing in that episode essentially is the fight, and it's just flashy laser swords, and we'll get into that in another time. So I'm gonna say there's a few things that happen in this episode, but not really. So you now have May, who is the evil twin, going around the ship, which for some reason is depowered. It still has some kind of emergency lights on it, even though they're in space and whatever. And it's her job to repair the ship. She doesn't seem to spend much time repairing the ship. She does repair Pip, the droid from the previous episode that was destroyed in order to get the Umbra moths to take Smilo Ren, Qimir, the stranger, whatever his name is, up into the sky. He didn't die, of course, because he's still alive. She does a factory reset on him. Instead of doing a wipe, as it's been described in Star Wars for years, they now have a factory reset on it. They couldn't have it just be that the droid is confused between Asha and May. They have to say factory reset. I don't know what the memory of this droid has to do with anything, but the weird sniffer thing comes in and does a little I'm in a weird little rodent song and dance kind of ninja thing, runs at her, grabs her leg, is stomping on her feet, and then somehow it sprays the ship or the droid sprays her in the eye with black goo, which is probably hydraulic fluid of some kind. It's the tinier, it's just the head, I think, at this point too. So where is all this goo coming from? I don't know.
I forgot about the factory reset. That was particularly egregious right there. Should be a memory wipe. Also, too, did you see that the lights in the droid are now red? Because, she's with May, kind of thing. Oh, sorry. I did not mean to gender the droid there. The droid is with May, and that's why it's red. But that was a very, I don't know. It really is something. That is for sure. So the ship is seen to be fluctuating in power, seen to be a little bit unstable, but that's not really set up in the previous episodes. So now it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Like the Millennium Falcon, for example. We get it. It's kind of like a hot rod of that era, and it's kind of, put together with Scotch tape bubblegum. We understand that whole thing, but this is like a Republic era ship, and for some reason it's just conveniently having power fluctuations for the plot. And it's like, wow, that's not great. But let's not forget, Jonas, the debut of the lightsaber whip was this episode.
That's true. That's true. Now let's set this up. So Saul, before the power goes out, Saul manages to get part of a message back to Coruscant. And the Jedi that's always proposing a plot and a cover-up gets the message. Bless her heart, I don't think this woman is really an actress. Everything she says is kind of flat. Whatever. I don't want to rag on her for too long here, but she gets some kind of message. Oh wait, no, somebody else gets it, and then she is the one that he contacts and says everyone is dead and all this stuff, and says, okay, we need to go to Kofar. How did you know that we need to go to Kofar? Because that's where I sent them. Okay, so I guess it's good that he contacted Vanestra Rowe here. So Vanestra Rowe, by the way, they do point out that Vanestra Rowe, there's some confusion about, he says, I know you get nauseous when we go into hyperspace. I don't know why we need to know this fact, but she says, no, it's actually that it just unsettles me. Again, I don't understand. Is this going to play into the plot that she gets space sick?
Also, too, Jonas, everybody's dead. I mean, she just heard that just a whole legion of Jedi have just been taken out. And now it's, I think Pro actually said it during the recap yesterday. He was saying, well, now it's time for jokes. I mean, tonally, this thing is all over the place. By the way, that scene where she reveals that, she gets hyperspace sick or whatever, a Selkath is featured in there. I thought that was very interesting because we have a story coming out on That Park Place talking about how Leslie Headland wants to do something with Knights of the Old Republic. At first it was Cortosis, now it's Selkath. Definitely bringing in some of that KOTOR canon here.
Yeah, it's so strange, just the whole thing. So they finally get there, and they set up these Umbra moths, that the Umbra moths are supposed to be nocturnal creatures. But they get to the planet, and for some reason, it's during the day, and the Umbra moth starts coming at them, again, during the day. Even they've set up these things are attracted to light during the night, and she just whips out that lightsaber whip, and it essentially looks like a lightsaber, but it can extend into a whip for some reason. They don't explain how this happens or why this happens. It doesn't. 25 years ago, I would not have cared if there was a thing that was called a lightsaber whip. It doesn't really make sense why the lightsaber stops at a certain distance. Eventually, when I was a little bit older, I figured out, it's an energy loop. It's just a very long, extended out loop. So that makes sense. But it also, for a long time, I just thought, well, why does the thing not know how to stop? Because you're willing to suspend your disbelief, but when there's a stack of things that cause you to be broken out of that suspension of disbelief. It just seems lazy after a certain point. Okay, so this thing, she literally uses the lightsaber whip. It is the exact same shot that's in the trailers, and then they move on with their day. So now that the Jedi know that there are corpses on this planet, but they knew that before. By the way, why did they not run into Saul? Because the power came up just before they got to the planet, and then Saul went somewhere. We don't know where. I think he's actually going to Coruscant. So this zany hijinks, they're actually switching places. As soon as they get to Kofar, he's off to Coruscant. It's silly, and everything happens for the plot, and literally for the plot, because they can't have them on the planet at the same time. So a lot of the seams are showing through here. By the way, when it's finally revealed that Jung-jae on the ship knows that it's May, the evil twin, he goes to hug what we all think he thinks is Osha, and it is the most violent hug. I mean, it is like it is a snatch and grab. I'm gonna hold you here kind of moment, and he confirms that he knows that it's May, but then he stuns her shortly. Wait, no, he doesn't confirm that. He doesn't confirm until after he stuns her that he knows that it's May. That's when he ties her up. If it seems like we're going out of order, it is because there is nothing in this episode that is really affected by the order in which events happen. There's a few moments here or there that, okay, well, she needs to repair the ship before he figures out that it's May. Or it could be revealed that he knew that the power was going to go out on the ship and he was stalling. Why? I don't know. The show just doesn't make any sense. Is there anything that we actually have to talk about that's left in this show, Vash?
Last thing is probably the scar. Remember where
Oh yeah. Another one that it doesn't quite make sense why she asks at a specific time. Vash, do you want to explain why the scar is revealed 2 times and the second time for no reason?
Yes. Well, the first time is when he was bathing, which, by the way, it's like, okay, we're going to show this guy without his shirt off, without anything. Did the same thing with Yord, by the way. But the women, not even going to show their legs, not even going to show any cleavage whatsoever, not going to show anything at all for the women. But the men, free reign, I guess. Okay, whatever. And then in a scene that's very inexplicable because there's no reason why he puts his shirt up, he's fixing his helmet, and he just puts his shirt up for just like a split second, and it shows the scar on his back, and that's what precedes that conversation about, well, how'd you get the scar? And apparently it was maybe from his old master. I'm guessing that Vanestra Rowe, I believe her name is, with that lightsaber whip, might have caught him. I think that's where they're going with it.
Yeah, that seems like it, because the show, Leslie Headland said in an interview that she wants people to be able to see what's coming up, because she thinks that the revelation here is better if you lead up to it. And there's an argument to be made for that, but I think everybody would like if this show, which is supposed to be a thriller, a question of what's going to happen next, would be nice in here. Mm-hmm. Also, they could have literally had the guy. I mean, they already exposed his arms, even though his costume in the last episode for a good portion of it looked like he was wearing his helmet and his cape backwards. They could have had him without a shirt in that if this is the kind of show that they're going to do. So they didn't have to have a bath scene. I think that the women folk over there at Lucasfilm wanted to have a bath scene. Again, reminding everyone here, as I often like to, that this is a show that is merchandise to 4-year-olds and preschoolers. Yes, this is a franchise that is merchandise to preschoolers. And now you have a scene where some guy is naked in a lake, and invites his supposed apprentice to join him in the lake with him. I don't know. This is just, what in the world happened to Star Wars? I don't know. I rated this episode, I think I rated it a 2, or did I rate it a 3? I don't care. At this point, it's just boring. I have no hope that this show is going anywhere. I was kind of hoping there would be like some scenery chewing villainy in this one, but instead we just get melancholy walking around. There's a little bit of violin music playing in the background. Nothing really happens. There's a moment where she threatens him with a lightsaber, but it comes out of nowhere, and she puts it right back, and I guess she's going to consider being evil now. Doesn't matter. Vash, what is your score on this episode?
Oh, it's got to be like a 1. It has to be a 1. I'm bouncing between 1 and 0. That's where it's at, because it's so unbelievably boring. nothing really happens. There's not really anything notable to speak of that we haven't seen necessarily before. So the sets, cinematography, all that, all those things seen before, haven't obviously moved the needle in any of those directions. It's lame. Like you said, it's all out of order. It really doesn't matter because the plot is apparently inconsequential. Now, It's interesting about the music and stuff. Apparently, in episode 5, there was like a Kylo Ren theme playing with Smilo Ren. We've seen his helmet is vaguely like Kylo Ren's. We've seen the allegories. That's going to be interesting. Something to note for future content in the Acolyte verse.
Right. So instead of the episode ending with May and Saul saying, "And now I'm going to tell you what happened." But by the way, he had a hilarious. The only time that I've ever harshed him on the accent, I'm going to do it here. He says something about how she treats the droid, and the way he says "you love him," he says it with a little. He takes a little too long on "you love him." It sounds like he's going like a school kid going "you love him." It's the only time I'm ever going to harsh Lee Jung-jae on the accent. Because I think literally he's the best thing in this entire series. He's raising the bar. He's probably the only reason it got the 2 points for me that this got. So I'm going to average these out to 1 because I rounded up on the last one, and you're saying it's a 0 or a 1 judgment call. We're going to collectively rate this episode a 1. Wild difference from the 6, I think, that we ended up averaging out to last week. By the way, it doesn't end on the "I'm going to tell you now what happened," which is apparently the only mystery they have left in the show. This ends on her putting the mask on, and I don't think it ends on a shot of the mask. It ends on an internal shot where you can kind of see a little slit coming out of the mask. It's so weird. All right, well, I'm sure you guys all have comments on this episode. Like this video if you like this video, and consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.